Good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday evening, at least evening New Jersey time, and I guess evening Central time. And the West Coast, y'all are still in late afternoon, so good for you for still having some sunshine. We don't here, but at least we don't have any rain, we don't have any snow, we don't have any earthquakes, we don't have any hurricanes. So, it was still 80 degrees today. I can't complain. Life is good. So those of you that have been part of the How to Write Dangerously conference this week, welcome back again. And for those of you that are here as part of our monthly Second Tuesday Writer Discussion group, it's always wonderful to see all of you. So I'm really glad to have you join us this evening. Let me just change my view here so I can read my screen. This evening's guest is Susan K. Williams Smith. She's a pastor, author, and musician interested in the relationships between politics, religion, and race. She's interested in spiritual community where the needs of people are met and where they are encouraged to become engaged in changing systems and policies which have caused their spiritual, economic, and social oppression. She's a graduate of Occidental College and Yale Divinity School. While a pastor, she worked with inner city kids in an arts camp, teaching them music, dance, acting, and drawing. Susan's books include the Book of Jeremiah, The Life and Ministry of Jeremiah A. Wright Jr., With Liberty and Justice for Some, The Bible, Constitution, and Racism in America, and Crazy Faith, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives. If you've been following the blogs for Compassion Christianity or How to Heal Our Divides, you've hopefully seen several different excerpts from Susan's book, With Liberty and Justice for Some. I had read that, gone through it, picked out excerpts, and, just really wanted to support that effort in Susan's work. And I also want to point out her excellent blog that is called Candid Observations. It's at candidobservation.com. And Susan is one of the wonderful people that contributes to it regularly. I mean, a lot of folks have kind of abandoned blogging at one level, which, I think is losing a rich source of intellect and nourishment. And so, for what it's worth, I am really glad that she has continued that. And, excuse me, has just enriched us, with all of her thoughts on a variety of topics. But, quite frankly, Susan writes a lot dangerously, about controversial topics, but important things that I think many of us need to hear. So, Susan, welcome again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And thank all of you for tuning in. Brian talked about my blog, which I do Candid Observations. And I also do something. I had this other book, The Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul. And it's a series of essays that I did. And actually, that book was picked up by a very conservative white evangelical publisher. Somebody liked and the acquisitions department liked the meditation, so they went through and they picked out 90 of them and they published it. But a lot of the people in the evangelical community thought that it was just almost like sacrilege, like, who is this woman and what's this theology and stuff. So I always tell people about that book, and I ask people to please buy it so we can, show something to the evangelicals. But I say all that to say that I do write these meditations every single week, and some of them are dangerous. But I look at writing as risk and renewal, because every time you risk a part of yourself, I find that you are renewed. I find that I am renewed. You hold your breath and you say, okay, I don't know how this is going to go, but you are hoping. I am hoping that I'm tapping into something that will to meet somebody's spirit. So all during the administration of the former president, I wrote prayers almost every day on Facebook because I thought people probably needed to mutter a little prayer to whichever God they wanted to mutter it to, just thinking about the stuff that was going on. And then I began to write these meditations. So I wanted to read to you, if that's okay, the one that I sent out today, um, uh, because I think I have Bill Moyers is someone that, if you don't know Bill Moyers, he was an outstanding journalist. I met him and he interviewed me, um, and I sent him. He's amongst the people that get these meditations every weekend. He wrote me back after this one. He said, "This is one of your best." So I said, "Gee," and I told him, I said, "When somebody says something like that to me, I have to go back and see what I wrote." So I am going to read it to you. And I want you to share, we can have conversations, how this meditation hits you, whoever you might be. Now, I write from the perspective of an African-American woman who's fed up with the system. I'm fed up with the system. I'm just totally fed up. And I have my questions with God. I wrestle with God and, wonder, why doesn't God just, fix it? Just fix it. Just fix it. Do what you can do. I'm just kind of irritated. I'm irritated that oppression exists. I'm irritated that this thing called white supremacy exists, not just here in this country, but all over the world. I'm just irritated with it. But in our irritation, or in my irritation, what I have to remember is that you just can't stop. What oppressive systems want to do is kill your hope. If they kill your hope, then they've got you. So these meditations are designed to make people think about maybe things they're wrestling with, to kind of loosen up some of the tension inside of themselves so that they have the will and the space to do the work to fight against oppression. So this one's called the Pass Hall. There's something about wanting something your whole life, seeing it, though it has not yet appeared, that is life-giving and that seems to open the door to receive the vision. Wait a minute, I just pulled up the wrong one. I'm sorry. I mean, it's the right one, but it's not the one that I edited. My bad. Give me a second here. Give me a second. I hate making people wait, but I do want to read you the one that I edited. Okay, here we go. There's something about wanting something your whole life, seeing it, though it has not yet appeared, that is life-giving and that seems to open the door to receive and retrieve the vision. All my life, I wanted to be a dancer. We couldn't afford it, but I read everything that I could about dancing and dancers. And as a teen, when I was able to pay for dance lessons myself, I became what I had seen. I did very well, even going so far as to be able to study with the Dance Theater of Harlem. Then as a pastor, I always wanted our choir to do all kinds of music so as to invite children from the neighborhood and they could see and hear all that was available for them to wish for. We did gospel music very well, but I wanted to expose the children in our community to more. I was able to get members of the Columbus Symphony Orchestra to play for us for one of our concerts. And I, for the first and only time in my life, had a complete orchestral score from which to direct. I had seen that from the time I was little. I saw myself directing a choir, directing an orchestra. I'd seen it. So we sang music in that concert, from the most classical to the most soul-stirring gospel, and the children were there sitting in front, and I loved it. Our choir was invited to be the featured choir for the Lion King promo, and was also invited to sing in concert with a country singer, Lyle Lovett, and we laughed. I said, how does that look? An African-American choir singing country music. It was so funny. Country music. And yet it was what I had seen. I had seen that we were going to do something different. So I was weeping when Cheryl Lee Ralph received an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in Abbott Elementary. She had seen where she wanted to be, and her vision guided her and landed her in a role that earned her a cherished award. She got an Emmy. I listened yesterday to actress Jennifer Lewis, who grew up in abject poverty, talk about how she had seen herself becoming famous in spite of not only living in poverty, but struggling with bipolar disease. She never stopped seeing what she wanted to be, and it came to be. And I recall Viola Davis, who likewise began to see herself doing great things with her life, despite being desperately poor. After, she says, she wrote a love letter to herself. All of that made me think of my mother, who for as long as I could remember wanted a house with a pass hall. The house we grew up in was a bungalow. You walked from the front porch right into the living room, and my mother hated it. She absolutely hated it. It seemed that there wasn't a week that went by without her saying that she wanted a house with a pass hall. And then after all those years of saying her vision out loud, it happened. Our family was able to move to a home that had a pass hall. We would walk into that house, and on the left side was a living room, and on the right was a study that became my dad's office. The pass hall took us past the stairs into the kitchen, where we walked through and turned to the left to get into the dining room. I remember the walkthrough, but what I remember is the tears that I saw in my mother's eyes. She walked into that pass hall. It had happened. What she had always seen and always wanted had come to be. She died a year later, but she died having seen her vision come to pass. And what this remembrance says, or is a reminder of, is that having vision, being able to see what you want and what God has for you, is a driver of hope and faith. Surely our ancestors saw themselves out of slavery, into schools on the highest levels, doing what the system said they would never do. Surely the vision stayed with them in spite of the way they were treated, and in spite of the roadblocks to freedom and justice and dignity that were put in their way. When you're able to see what your spirit is feeding you, you have a power within that the world cannot touch. It did not give the vision, and therefore it cannot take it away. It just kind of grows inside your spirit like a fetus, continuing until there is nothing left for it to do than to be born. If we, even in this most difficult time, keep the vision of justice and freedom and dignity for all, in spite of those whose only desire is to preserve the system as it has always been, we will see victories. We will see our pass halls, so to speak. We are not powerless as long as we have the capacity to see what the world cannot see and what the world thinks is crazy for us to think about. Our lives and our hopes and what God has in store for us do not die until we do. Our task is to live on purpose and not give in to despair and hopelessness, and know, not just believe, but know that the vision is truly for an appointed time. We are strengthened by knowing that vision, that which we see is on its way. Amen and amen. So I say that, I read that because Bill Moyers told me it was me at my best. I wanted to see what I wrote, but but also because it says to me the power of writing. I know Maya Angelou, I met her when I was in college, and she said, if you are a writer, you must write every day. You must write every single day. When you don't feel like it, you write. She says, if you sit at your desk for 4 hours and you only write one sentence, you write every day. But what I find is that I write every day, but sometimes I write with more spirit, if that makes sense. And I write because I have to. I write because I have to get something out. And I write because I feel like if I've got something bugging me, then it's bugging somebody else too. That, if I'm feeling a sense of dismay, somebody else feels it too. If I'm feeling lost, somebody else is feeling it too. And so writing then becomes a risk because of what I might write. But then after I have written it and I have gotten it out and I have gotten that crud out of my spirit is renewed and freed up, I guess, to see and to hear what the next thing will be for that I need to write about. So it's a need, it's like eating. If I don't write, I feel like I'm not doing something in my day. I have to do it. And every time I do it, it is renewal. So that's what I shared with Brian. I was going to talk about writing as risk and renewal. And I'm just wondering, because I don't like to talk a whole bunch, I'd rather write than talk. But I wonder how you think about that, writing as risk and renewal. Have you ever thought of it as that? Anybody? Nobody?
I've never thought of it that way. I know music renews me, but I never thought about that when I write, I'm renewed.
Have you ever felt renewed when you've written? Anybody? I mean, Nettie answered, but have you ever felt renewed? You have? Can you share? Can anybody share that
I
experience?
have.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is Shardell.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been for the better part of a year working on a project on my journey in social activism work, but coming from the church, going really deep into indigenous African spiritual traditions, and then coming back to Jesus. And I mean, it's so many, it's so, it's so many intersections with that. But the thing that had renewed me the most, and I think about it in relation to the Bible, is writing out my genealogy. That had been one of the things that had really informed a lot of my journey for the past 15 years is understanding who I am and who my ancestors were. And so as I'm able to, dig into that further and further and get another name and write it down, I do feel extremely renewed.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Anybody else?
Hi, Dr. Smith. My name is Peggy, and I'm new to the platform of writing. I'm just getting started with this. And I feel like I was thrust into writing a call. God commanded me to write a book. I wrote my manuscript, and the risk of writing, I think, has sort of blocked me, because it means I have to open, because I'm writing a memoir, and I have to share some very personal things. Once I wrote the manuscript, I felt renewed. But once I got into the editing and presenting it to the editor and so forth, and she gave it back to me with the comments, telling me what she suggested that I do, I found myself stuck. And because of the risk of doing the writing, I have not been able to move forward. But once I did the manuscript, I got it written, I felt like a load had been lifted off me. But now actually getting it out there, getting it published and doing all that work and thinking about the intimate things that I had to write in it, it's sort of, it got me to a place of being stuck. And thank you for reading The Pass Hall. That really hit me in my spirit, because I never thought I would ever be able to be a homeowner. But early on in my life, the Lord had made some promises to me, and that's what the book is about. So the promise came to fulfillment, to fruition in 2018, and that's when I was instructed to write the book. But it's just going through the whole process of life, revealing and sharing, because he said to me, share your testimony, and just being able to write that and think, just in my head, I'm thinking about what are people going to think.
Absolutely.
When and like you said, I saw something of the crazy faith. I do believe I have crazy faith. And sometimes my crazy faith gets me in trouble, where I'm scorned and, I'm told I'm overboard and all of that stuff. But so now, yes, I understand the risk and the renewal, because I've experienced both. But then it seems like the risk of writing has me now stagnated to some degree. So, but I like your spirit. I really like your spirit. And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to write and do what I know God is telling me to do, and not worry about people who are afraid to take the risk. So thank you. And I appreciate being on this platform tonight.
Thank you. And you know what? It is scary. It's scary. It's scary, but it's also, I guess, because it is so scary, you are so vulnerable. So you're sharing pieces of your soul. You're putting pieces of your soul out, and people get to, pick over it, and it is very painful. But then you just, I don't know, once you get, so a couple of weeks ago in the Tuesday meditation thing, I don't remember what the subject was, but I was telling a story, and I never told it before, about how when I was in school, I was in integrated schools, and there was this teacher, she's a white lady, and what can I say? Anyway, I had to go to the bathroom, and I kept, how when you're a kid, you want something really bad, and you keep raising your hand, ooh, ooh, ooh. Maybe you guys can do that. Ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me. And I kept raising my hand, and she turned around and out loud. And I was doing that because I had to go to the bathroom. And she turned around and she said, would you please? And everybody turned around and stared at me, and I felt embarrassed, and I felt like a bad girl, and I felt like all of that. But I really had to go to the bathroom. And when she turned back around to the blackboard, I actually peed in my pants. I never told that story before. I'd never told that story before. Even when I talk about it now, I'm talking about the risk now, because that's embarrassing. And I remember, and I told the story and how I sat there, and pee was all over the floor. People looked around. Oh, Susan peed on the floor. I can remember it as though it happened yesterday. And it's amazing how many comments I got from people who said something like that happened to me too.
Yes.
That's the thing, that our experiences, even when I tell it, it's still so painful, but I can tell it. I can tell it. And so that's why it's renewal, because then when you begin to hear people say, well, they come forth a little bit timidly, but that happened to me. And then I was reading Viola Davis's book, and lo and behold, something like that happened to her. She has this book called Finding Me. And I was reading it, and lo and behold, she had an episode like that happened to her too. So that, so that type of experience for us when we're children, those experiences are not just ours. They're not just ours. And I think many of us walk around carrying our stuff in little suitcases. This happened to me and this happened to me, and I'm a bad girl and I did this and this is the, and we could dump the suitcases out and we might not be able to distinguish one person's pile from another person's pile, because so many of our experiences are so similar. So when we write and when we take the risk, we are actually performing a ministry, if you would, or reaching out to people who are just knotted up inside because they can't talk about what they went through. And so the fact that, the editors get on your nerves. They really get on your nerves. And you have, it's a gift to find an editor who knows your spirit, right? What you always want is to have an editor who knows your spirit. You can always, change sentences to make them more effective, and you can use better words and use fewer words and use better adjectives and all that kind of stuff. And a good editor will do that, but that editor will also preserve your spirit. So it is your voice. And at the end of the day, at the end of that project, your story has been told. So the stuff that the editors do is like making you eat your broccoli. So you got to eat the broccoli. You got to eat it. And you got to swallow it, because when you eat your broccoli, it has antioxidants in it, and it'll keep cancer away from you. You know what I'm saying? And you just have to take it and swallow it. When you have something that they really don't get and they want to change, you say, no. So what it does is, this is part of the renewal process. It gives you your voice. You see, you understand that you don't have to just take it just because the editor said to do it. You can have a conversation. I don't think we want to do it that way because, and you can explain yourself. And even in doing that, you are releasing, you are being renewed. So I would hope that you would not, shy away from it. If God told you to write the book, you need to write the book and you need to publish it. I'm just saying, because God wouldn't have told you to write it if God didn't want you to do it. Just saying. And God already knew the things you're going to have to go through. And you're no different than any other writer in the whole wide world, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to put it in perspective like that.
Yes. Thank you.
You are welcome.
So Susan, I'm on your Tuesday meditation email list.
Okay.
And so I have a copy of the pass hall, that came to me by email. But I went to Candid Observation. I don't see it there yet. And
for Candid Observation, I wrote a different one this week.
So is there a copy?
I'm going to put pass hall on you tonight. Yeah, I'm going to put.
Okay. All right. So once I have a link to it, I can pass that on to, the folks here.
Okay. We'll do that.
But I can't do that from the email. I have to wait until it's on your website. So,
okay.
Okay. So just so everybody knows, we'll get you a copy of that.
Yes. Yeah, so a lot of times on Candid Observations, it's not as personal. It is more of like a I don't know, I'm going to call it a diatribe against what's going on in the world. That intersection between religion and politics, and the question basically up underneath everything I'm writing is, what the hell is going on? And so I write about it because I think many people want to know that. People want to know. And so I write stuff like that. That is more of the kind of stuff you see on Candid Observations. But every once in a while, I will take one of the meditations and put it on the blog. So I'll do that this evening.
Well, I read your meditations, and sometimes I want to share them, on one of my social medias, but I can't.
Okay. Well, this is
if I
good.
can't
So I'll do it every week. That's
If I can't
good.
point to it somewhere, with a link, then I can't share it with people. So it may be within the email if you have the ability to put a link to it or something. I don't know, but
Brian, the last time you asked me to try to do a link, I spent half a day trying to figure it out. So I'll just put it in the blog.
technology is great when it works,
Oh,
but
God. Yeah.
So there were a couple of other folks that kind of unmuted a moment ago. Who else would like to raise a question or make a comment?
Well, yeah, listening to your comments took me a minute to process kind of your question, but I'm a pastor of a congregation, and we have a newsletter that comes out twice a month. I wish it was once a month, but it isn't. And I probably labor longer than I really ought to, but I always have a pastor's corner. And I find sometimes the risky part of doing that is I try to, I've tried as I've gone along, I've been here 6 years now, and I've tried to get more self-revelatory, and I've tried to interweave when it's appropriate, when it fits kind of the topic or whatever, interweave more personal things. And so I did write a pastor's corner about, I happen to be legally blind, and I wrote a pastor's corner about it one time because I thought, I don't think I've really ever explained it to people. I don't think they quite get why I do some of the things I do. And I think the risky part about doing that to me is hardly anybody ever says anything. I just kind of wonder, I put it out there and it gets published online, and it gets put in our print newsletter, and it's out there. But for me, I think the risky part is I don't know. I just trust that maybe it lands with somebody that needs to hear it, or once in a blue moon, I have a person in particular that will respond and say something like, wow, that was great, or love that pastor's corner. But then after I've labored over it and I've thought about it so long, and I finally get it done, I'm like, oh, I'm so relieved. It's like, okay, it's out there now, for good or for bad. It's
or worse, right?
It's there, so that's the release. But for me, the risky part is sharing it and just not knowing for sure where it goes. I don't have a Bill Maher or whoever you were mentioning talking about how great my newsletter is. So for me, I think that's the risky part. But I keep telling myself, well, I have to do it. I'm getting ready to do another one next week. So I just keep plugging away at it. But sometimes it does feel pretty risky because I've shared something I think that's pretty personal, and it's like goes into some great vacuum somewhere. I don't know, but I just keep doing it because I feel like when I write it, it's what God's telling me to write, what God's leading me to say at that particular moment, that particular point of relevance for my congregation. So I keep doing it, but some days I think, man, Karen, you spend way too much time on this. But
I think the important thing is to do the writing. I think renewal, it's almost like having forgiven somebody. Help me with this. When we're before we if we don't forgive people, we hold it inside, and then we forgive them. We let go of it. We don't need to be right. We just let go of it. And when you get to that point, you really don't care. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't care what the other person says or feels. You just know that you're not going to carry that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think, so I thought about that when you were talking. I also thought about how when I was the pastor of my church, and we would do Thanksgiving and Christmas food baskets, and we were in the city, and you know, sometimes people, some of the deacons and the officers would come say, well, Reverend Sue, I don't know what they're going to do with this food. And, you know, and I would say that it's not up to us to determine, you know, to worry about what they're going to do with it. It's up to us to do what God tells us to do, and then it's on them. So you free yourself up. You understand? So when you're writing, part of the process of being renewed, you write it and you just don't care. I mean, you just don't, you don't, the affirmation is good. Most of the time when I write Tuesday meditations, I don't get feedback. I really don't. With my books, I've gotten some feedback, but not, you know, not a whole lot, but I don't do it to feed their souls, although their souls may be fed. I do it to honor the hunger in my soul, that thing inside of me that says, I have to get this out. And so if you keep that in mind, and here's the thing, a lot of times people are so moved by what they have read or heard that they can't talk. Remember, most people don't release the stuff that's in them. And they might be sitting someplace and saying, she's feeling the same thing I'm feeling. She's going through the same thing, and they've never shared it, and they're not about to share it, but they are amazed to see, to hear, to understand, to know that somebody else is going through exactly what they've been going through, and they can't talk about it. And so that's why it becomes a divine assignment, Karen, that you just do it because God says do it. You do it because your soul won't let you rest. You know, sometimes things will follow me around, you know, I don't want to write about it, you know, that it'll follow me around. And I know that I have to get it out. I have to get it out. It's like a bug or something inside of me. And so that which is in you, if it is pushing you, then you must honor that part of your spirit and then come what may. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I keep doing it. I mean, that's part of the task, part of my ministry. And and most of the time I just write it and it's out there, it's gone by. I feel better because it's done, it's gone. And I don't really think a whole lot about it, but it just struck me when you asked that question that's where the risk feels like it's to me. But there's a lot of stuff I do. I never have feedback. I don't have feedback on my sermons a lot. I don't have, you know, I just keep doing them because God keeps telling me to do them. And the church hasn't asked me to leave yet. So I keep doing it. But I just thought when you were asking that question, that to me, that's a piece of the risky part. It's letting it go and be out there and not knowing what happens with it, but hoping that maybe God's using it somehow. So I trust and I keep doing it. So I'll keep doing it.
Just keep on doing it because it's really it's a you and God thing, and it's you and your spirit thing. It's not a you and them thing. Even though you're touching them in ways you will never know.
I think that's one of the things that I wanted to follow up on too. You know, Susan mentioned this. It's like, I'm always surprised how many times I get these emails or Facebook messages from someone that I had no idea that they were paying any attention, you know, to the things that I was putting out there. And they say something about, you know, I've been following your email, you know, for years and I appreciate all the, you know, yada, 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 yada. And then they ask me some specific question about, you know, whatever. So there's just a lot of folks out there that, you know, are being impacted by your work and you just may not realize.
And I do the same thing. I mean, I'm reading all the time and I don't necessarily write to the author and say, wow, man, did I love that book? I should. I just finished a really good one. I'm like, I just don't I think so. I get it. I understand that. But sometimes, you know, it does feel a bit risky, especially if you don't get any feedback. But, you know, I feel the task to write and I do it. So I appreciated your question. It was a good question to ponder.
And that is that does make it dangerous, you know, because you don't know, somebody might like it, but somebody might come up to you and say, you know, that was the dumbest thing. What the hell? You might get that kind of thing too. So and a lot of the stuff that I write on the blog, for instance, and amazingly, I don't get a lot of that really negative pushback, but I mean, I really could because people are so polarized. I'm getting ready to write something about how, I'm sorry that Queen Elizabeth died because she was somebody's mom and somebody's grandmother and somebody's great grandmother and all of that. And she, She was a human being, but she was also a supporter of rank suppression and subjugation of peoples all over the world. And I cannot sit and will not sit and look at all of this, pomp and circumstance, and hailing her as though she were like the next thing next to Michael the Archangel. She wasn't. And so I'm going to write about that. I'm sure I'll get a little pushback about that, but that's where it's risky, because I think what happens is, I know I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are afraid to say it, but they want to get it out so people can get stuff out through your writing, through what you write. Somebody said, thank you for saying that. And I'm sure if you've not heard it already, you will. If you're writing like that, people will say, thank you for saying that. Meaning I wanted to say it, but I was too scared. So you said it and I feel better. But it's a dangerous thing. I asked the question a couple of days ago, and I've not yet figured out when I'm going to write this, but I was asking somebody, I said, why does everybody think Ronald Reagan was such a good president? I mean, I'm just getting curious, just really curious. Why do you think he's a good president? He started his campaign in a place where some horrendous racial lynchings took place, and he was sending out a message about, sending a message to the South, to the Southern whites, that he was with them. And then that whole trickle-down economics thing, what was that? I mean, it didn't make people, didn't expand the wealth or share the wealth. People got more. He kind of abolished his economic policies, kind of got rid of the middle class, and people like deify him. So I'm trying to figure out what makes it. And he was one that said, "Make America Great Again," way before this past president. So what are we celebrating? What makes him so good? Those are the kinds of things that I write when I'm struggling with the intersection of race and politics and religion, because I don't get it. So I figure if I don't get it, somebody else doesn't get it too. So maybe if I put it out there, somebody can have a conversation, because I truly don't get it. And I don't use the what I absolutely hate is when people use writing to be nasty, because words are so powerful. Words are so, you can't take them back. One of the most powerful stories I heard, my mom told us, is that when you say something, she told us a story. She's always telling stories. And she said this old man took this little boy out, and there's this fence, and he painted it, made him paint it. And then he made him, put nails in it. So he went down and his grandfather made him put a bunch of nails in. So he went down in this brand new painted fence, and he put the nails in it, and they went in the house. The next day, grandfather said, "Come on, let's go back out to that gate or that fence." And they went out. He told him to pull the nails out. That's weird. So he was pulling the nails out, and his grandfather said, "That's what words do. They make a hole in people's spirits, and you can't make the hole go away."
Wow.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah. So Kate's got her hand raised. Hi, Kate.
Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
My phone. So Dr. Smith, I just wanted to thank you for your words tonight, and also your words earlier today on the Writing for Your Life conference. You've given me a lot of encouragement. So I'm grateful for your ministry and your prophetic words. So thank you. I just want to build on two of the points that have been made. I think it's Karen, right? I just want to agree, Karen, that I think writing can be really lonely. I published 3 books, and I continue to be struck by that it's a lonely thing for just the reasons that we talked about. Like, you don't, when you're in a conversation, you get verbal cues, nodding, if you're in a meeting or making presentations. Being writing is lonely. And so I've been thinking about that a lot for myself as an extrovert. A lot of writers are introverts. I'm an extrovert. So how can we build in ways to connect? And I think this is a great example. I mean, Karen, you may not get that feedback from your congregation, but we can give you that support here. So glad to be together. And Dr. Smith, I think your last point about sort of you can't take words back, and that includes the words that God calls us to write. And I think one thing I'm thinking about this week is, something I published in 2017 may not be where I'm at, in my spiritual journey or my intellectual journey in 2022. And people are going back and reading that that I wrote in 2017. So just curious, sort of as your career and trajectory continue, how do you feel about that sort of time passing and maybe your perspectives changing or whatever, and your words being out there from an earlier era? I don't know if that's an issue for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for being at the other thing too today. I appreciate it. I think the definition of life is moving, growing. Nobody should stay in the same place their whole life, or they're just like walking dead. My perspective about things that have to do with religion it just changed. I can't even, I'm angry because I studied it, but now I feel it, how religion has been used to control so many people. And I'm angry because I hear these clowns talking about they want this to be a Christian nation, which what they want has nothing to do with Christianity. I'm angry at it, and I'm angry at how the religion of Jesus that I read has been so bastardized. I'm angry about that. I'm angry, and I look at now. I have this lens that how everything. That's why my presentation earlier meant so much to me, was how this whole workings of empire has been cooked into the stew, even in the Bible. We have been fed this stuff and we didn't even know it. It's like the whole domination thing. Walter Wink talks about how we have been manipulated into the good guy and the bad guy, and there's a good guy and he dominates the other people, and no matter what, that whole theory of domination, and some people are meant to be dominators and other people are meant to be dominated. I'm just like angry. Where do you get that? And so my perspective on religion and religious thoughts has changed. And you know how I handle it when I do workshops and do presentations? I will refer to what I've said in the past. And so, back in, 2012, I wrote, but I've changed. I've just changed. I just have to be honest. I don't think that way anymore. I said this afternoon how I don't do communion anymore because I'm irritated. Why are we, and I got to figure it out, why are we celebrating salvation? Jesus never even said the word salvation. Why do we have to do it? Why do we have to participate in taking the symbols of the body and blood of a Palestinian Jew? Y'all don't even like Jewish people. What are we doing? I mean, that's how my thinking has changed and it's evolved. Why do I have to do that to be, in right relationship to God? And for me, I don't believe that anymore. I think what I have to do, I don't need for anybody else to believe me. But what I have to do in order to be in right relationship with God is try to love people even when I don't even like them. You know what I'm saying? And I have to love people and help them even when I don't want to, because that's what I think the Gospels tell us to do. That's all I have to do. You don't have to agree with me. We were in a conversation with Faith and Public Life the other day about Christian nationalism. And I said, I don't call them Christian because nothing that they're doing to me is Christian. And I don't call them patriots because I don't think you can be a patriot and be trying to overturn your country. And so there was some pushback, about you can't tell people who are, I said, I'm not trying to tell anybody that they are not a Christian. I'm saying I can't call them Christian. I can't do that. I wasn't always like that. But now I look at what's going on. I'm thinking, well, this religion, and I hit it in my book that I wrote, Brian. I mean, it's there, but it has like sunk in. That conflict that I have, because you grow. When you grow, you hurt, you change, and all of that, and it's sunk into someplace in my spirit. And I'm just saying, I just can't do it like I used to do it. So, and I'm an introvert. It's cracking up. You say you're an extrovert. And it is very lonely. You spend a lot of time together, and part of that is just fine with me. But the other part of it is that, it's in the conversations with people or the listening to people that you get your best ideas. It's the thing that puts a spark in you. And so And I can't remember if it was a conversation or if it was like one of those retreats where you go on and at the end, you get in the circle and everybody takes communion. And I remember looking around, so what are we doing? What are we doing? And how is this pleasing to God? I don't get it. So that's just my little struggle. I don't argue with people. I like to listen to people and see what they're thinking, but I'm not going to argue with you. But I know that when I then go and give presentations, if people have read my stuff, if they point to something I wrote years ago, I say, yep, I sure did write it and I've changed. Period. And it's okay.
Well, thank you for that. That's a good reminder that we're allowed to change, even if it's in writing. So thank you.
Yeah, we have
Absolutely.
to evolve.
Yeah, no, I totally really support that notion.
And also my mother doesn't let me call it, when I go to Washington, D.C., I'm not allowed to call it the Reagan International Airport. I have to. I call it DC.
When I said out loud that I wonder why Reagan was a good president, somebody said, oh, I'm so glad you said that because, and she said that her mother won't let her say it either. It's National Airport. It's just National Airport. And she says her mother's whole personality changes when she says that. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. See, that's what you say something and you find out that a whole bunch of people are right where you are.
Yeah. Every time I drive into that airport, I make a yucky face. So thank you.
Thank you.
What else? What other questions do people have for Susan?
Not yet. Not yet. No.
I have one.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Hi. I have probably about three things to share. You said earlier that some people's writing leaves you speechless. Earlier today, your video left me speechless, and it's still like on my mind all day long. So thank you for that again. And have you heard of the book Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen?
Yes, yes. When it first came out, because I didn't like John Wayne, I said, I am not going to read that. And then somebody said something. I said, well, maybe I will. It is so on point. It's so on point. Yeah.
For me, that explained the whole Reagan. As Frank Thompson calls it the myth of the Wild Wild West.
Frank Thomas, yeah.
Sorry. It's that whole wave of enthusiasm that brought in millions of votes and got Reagan elected president. I think he became an icon for that myth. And the Wild Wild West is a big part of it. Yeah.
Right.
So. And to answer your question about the risk and reward, the book Inside of Me is very controversial and very risky, and yet God started placing it within me about 5 years ago. It's been 5 years in the works, and I tell you, when He gives me a new revelation, which usually ends up being a new chapter in the book, it brings me back to His design for procreation. And I stop everything and worship Him, and it renews my spirit. And I can only hope that once I ever do, I haven't written anything yet outside of myself. You spoke about that earlier. You have something inside of you and it's itching to get out, and it hasn't yet. It's this complete book inside of me. And this thing they call inspiration is amazing and miraculous. Mm-hmm. And so far it has only renewed my spirit and been a blessing to me and caused me to go back to God's original design for procreation and just worship Him for that and be amazed by it. And just stop. I just stop what I'm doing and go, oh. But then the entire gist of the book is highly controversial in today's politically divided era. And it's sometimes difficult to talk about because people will curse me to hell, and the subject is about abortion rights, and they will call me a baby killer and say I'll be cursed to hell for murdering babies and stuff. And I'm like, but hold on, let's go back to and look at God's design for procreation. Wait a minute, and then just the renewal of my own spirit happens because of this book inside of me. So that's been an amazing experience.
That's wonderful. I hope you start writing it soon. I hope you start writing it. Hey, you guys, you're right. Do you ever have like this wonderful idea and you think you'll remember it and then later on you forgot it altogether and you can't even believe that you forgot it because it was such a wonderful idea, but you can't find it?
I email it to myself.
I have
Yeah.
started doing that too, because I for a while before all that I started walking around with a pencil and paper because you think you're going to keep it and it doesn't. I've written on newspapers and napkins and stuff because you have to catch it while you have it. So I say that to say that whatever's in you, it is begging to come out on paper. There's one other thing that I remember. You made me think of how we change. I remember when I was in seminary, inclusive language was a thing, and I rebelled. What are you talking about? Just God is God. God is a guy. He, him. God is a guy, and I was just like so turned off by this whole thing of inclusive language and stuff. And I think one of my worst days was when we were singing Hallelujah chorus and you couldn't sing it because you couldn't say King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But today I understand, even though I would still sing the Hallelujah chorus, but I would still sing it. I would still, because I understand now the implications of those words. But a funny thing that I'm understanding is that God is a spirit. Okay, this is something again. God is a spirit. They that worship him must worship God in spirit and truth. God doesn't necessarily have to be, a guy. The people that wrote the Bible made him a guy, made it a guy, made the spirit a guy. But God is a spirit. It's a spirit. And I remember being in Baltimore one year, and they had like a display of creches, the nativity scene, and there was this little Asian family. There was an Asian baby. There was an Asian depiction, an Asian parent and all that. And this little white family said, the little girl said, "Look, they made him a China person." And the mom said, "Well, they don't know what they're talking about." And I thought, well, who died and made you what? So I say that to say that as I've listened to stuff like that, and I realize how it has damaged people across the country and across around the world. When I do, we have a call to worship when we do worship service, Psalm 100, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Praise the Lord. Let us come before God's presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, she is God. It is God that has made us and not we ourselves. We are God's people and the sheep of her pasture. So enter into her gates of things. I do it because God is not just a man. And I can't tell you how many of the faithful have called me and told me I'm being blasphemous. Well, okay, I'll be blasphemous. But I think that there's just a way that religion has been presented to us that just supports this male-dominated patriarchal, system. And I don't want to be dominated, and I don't want my children to be dominated, and I don't want the world to be dominated. I want us to live more in community. And so that has to mean that we open our eyes and our ears and our hearts and our spirits to more possibilities. Risky, 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 risky.
Thanks, Vicki, for sharing that. What are other thoughts that people have this evening? Any other topics that you'd like to talk about or ask Susan about? Go ahead.
Which one of us? There was a couple of us.
I just saw you, Vicki. Was there somebody
uh,
else? The reason
I thought I saw M. Glaze.
Oh, Mimi?
I'll try.
Would
I'll
you
try
like
to be.
something, Mimi?
You're muted.
We can't hear you, Mimi. There we go.
There you
Yeah, there we are. Thank you so much, Dr. Susan Smith, for just talking about the whole the concept, the seed of seeing and vision work was powerful for me.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it is. I think it's very powerful to be able to see things. I think once you see it, you're on your way to having it happen. But you have to see it.
Yeah. And I actually had a discussion today with a friend about where I see my visions and dreams, and they're not necessarily in the same. I mean, this is a whole nother subject, but what I see or hear in a dream isn't what I get when I'm awake in the liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
And that liminal space has been very powerful at different seasons of my life. So trying to interpret that, I not only write about it, but create artwork.
Ah,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's great.
And that doesn't come all the time, where the writing is really, for me, is a constant. It's a daily practice for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's not a question whether I publish it or not. Sometimes I do. I have things that I'd like to, but it is a way of fleshing out what's going on within me that needs to be, what's the word I want? Understood within my own spirit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
It's generative is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vicky,
Yeah.
did you want to contribute something?
Sure. Actually, Mimi, what you just said really speaks to the renewal piece that Dr. Smith was talking about beautifully. I also have questioned. I refer to God as a spirit, as they, them, or she, or he, whatever I'm feeling like that in that moment. And with the nature of my writing, on abortion rights and tying it in with God's original design for procreation, I've toyed with the idea of referring to God in with she, her pronouns, but I'm not sure the book would sell or be relatable to the women who I'm writing to, because I have a very specific audience in mind. Have you ever played with that in publication or using different pronouns for God in publishing your work?
I have, and even just kind of relegated God to be genderless because, it just
Okay.
irritates me, just, just God. I just, kind of, sometimes it's kind of redundant, but to avoid the he, she, but sometimes I will say God's spirit or God's will, his/her, so I do that in the writing so people get the idea that I'm not trying to make God all male all the time. Not doing it.
Yeah. I'm thinking of also maybe creator, capital C, or creator spirit might be a good way.
Yeah.
Substitute a lot of times. But
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there are so many creative names for God throughout Scripture. There's gobs of them, like Mother Hen, and like you say, Creator, and there's so many that don't have to be tied to gender. And
That's right.
I try to be inclusive as well, because I'm like, I'm sorry, God ain't some big dude in the sky. I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. So I think there are a lot of biblical images that we can draw on as well that aren't necessarily about gender, and they are diverse about creation. So
I gotta go let my dog out. I'll be right back.
I really love they, in a lot of different contexts, I try to use that more and more. I used to, a lot of times I'd say you guys, and, and I'd mean it non-binary, but, I finally got myself away from using that term just because, it is, a guy means a guy, literally, but,
I like they also, especially in the concept of God as Trinity works really well for me. Very much a Shack thing, the book Shack.
Well, I wish there was a singular of they too, right? I mean, in other languages there is, but
Yeah.
you know, we don't have that in English, which is only one of the very many issues that the English language has.
Yeah. Because we used to have it, the endow, you know.
Ah,
But
yeah, of course.
talk that way anymore, but that was part of that movement. And it's in Judaism is I am thou with Uber. I mean, so we kind of did. And like, see, a lot of languages do have the singular formal, a formal singular, but English doesn't really anymore. We don't really use that, which is kind of sad. But
It is.
But on another subject, when she was talking about Ronald Reagan, I had to laugh a little because when I lived in the Czech Republic, I lived on a little street, and in the next block, it was Ronald Reagan Street. And it was one block, and it was where the American ambassador's residence is. And it had a sign in English and in Czech, and I took pictures of it because I had a really good friend who's Republican, and I thought I'd get a kick out of it. And so I have pictures of it, and it tried to explain in a short, pithy way who Ronald Reagan was. And so it was Ronald Reaganova Ulica. And I just, when I found it one day, when I moved in and I was walking around my neighborhood, I almost busted out laughing because I'm like, and they have to explain who Ronald Reagan is in Czech and English. So, but it's only a 1 block street in Prague. So you only got 1 block, but that's where the American ambassador's residence is. Yeah. So I chuckle at that every time. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Susan, is there anything that you'd like to leave our friends with?
No, except that I'm just really honored that you came and we had this chat. And if you want to be on the Tuesday meditation list, I can, maybe get the emails from Brian. But I will, you made me think of something. Since people like them, Brian, I'll just put them on the blog every week in addition to the other stuff.
That'd be wonderful. I mean, as I said, there have been several times when I get your email and I'll read it and I'll try to look around to find it, so that I can share it. And I wasn't able to do that. I don't want to just copy and paste, your whole blog and put it in mine. Even if I would refer to, I'd rather have it point to your website.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just a little thing, but
yeah, I wrote that down. I'll start doing that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Everyone go to candidobservation.com and you'll subscribe to Susan's email and you'll get to see lots of really, as you can just tell from our discussions, deep things and really useful things that Susan has to say.
I appreciate it. And I also think that it's just writing is such a, we're not a society that reads a whole lot, but I still think reading is one of the best ways to get stuff into people's souls. You just get, if you read something, it's like, I don't know, it's like chewing up a piece of something, a piece of meat or a piece of fish or something. It goes down and it's in there and it's nourishing your spirit. And that's what I think the value of it is. So when we risk, we allow other people to be renewed as well. So I hope that all of you who are thinking about writing will do it. And those of you who are not thinking about doing it, will think about it and do it, because I think that there's a great need. And with the craziness going on, you don't know, these clowns are gonna, they're already kind of trying to control what we read and not. So that should just make you mad. Just write more, just write more, because they can't get rid of everything that we write. So if we're writing, they just can't do it. Once it's, that once you write something and it's on the internet, it's out there. So they can't do anything with it. I would encourage you to use the gift and the time that we have to do all the writing that you can.
Amen. Amen. Well, if you do want to get on Susan's blog, just send me an email. I'll forward it to Susan and, she'll get you on there. So thank you again, everyone. We'll have another second Tuesday on October, whatever it is, second Tuesday of October, 8:00 Eastern. And Susan, thanks again for joining us so much today.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.